Going back to their previous attempt to get Scarborough Shoal, what if they try to do it again? I mean, regardless of what happens to the COC, if they try to get Scarborough Shoal again with dredging, and well, Obama's not there anymore, it's President Trump, what should we do?
Well, then we should know how to use the Mutual Defense Treaty with the U.S. Because under the Mutual Defense Treaty, any attack by China, armed attack by China on a Philippine vessel, Coast Guard or Navy, will trigger the MDT. We can ask for support from the U.S. So from the calculation of China, since President Duterte said, if China builds on Scarborough Shoal, I cannot do anything. So it's a signal to China that they can build now, and I will not send a vessel there, Philippine Navy ship, that could be attacked by China. So there is no chance for us to invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty because there will be no Philippine Navy ship there.
So long as we don't send any vessel or any aircraft there,
then we cannot invoke the treaty. So China will reclaim during the term of President Duterte because they know that we will not be able to invoke the treaty. Now, if somebody else is the president and China reclaims, that president may send a Philippine ship, and if that is attacked, then we can invoke the treaty. That is what China doesn't want to happen. The last thing that China wants is to give the U.S. a legal excuse to intervene. So that's why I say that the Chinese will reclaim before the end of the term of President Duterte because he already said, I cannot stop them.
What do you think is the reason that the president would say such a thing? Is it out of ignorance, perhaps, or is it out of distrust that the U.S. will really come to our defense if we do send a ship and, China declares war? And what could be the underlying reason that the president would say that? Because I don't want to think that he's giving away Scarborough Shoal readily.
Well, the president said that I want to get loans and investments from China, so I want to put aside the ruling. And I don't want any conflict with China because we cannot win a war against China.
So he's afraid of war.
He's afraid of war. But China doesn't want war also because that will draw in the U.S. China doesn't want to provoke us because that will draw in the U.S. So China is doing it incrementally, short of war, because war for them is too risky. They don't want to invite or provoke the U.S. into entering into the dispute.
What about the belief of some Filipinos that the U.S. is not sincere about coming to our defense
especially
when
President
war
Trump
does
right now.
break out? Yes.
Well, that one is a very sensitive thing. Let us say the Chinese will today reclaim Scarborough Shoal. If we send a ship and that ship is attacked, so we invoke the treaty. Now, if the U.S. will honor the treaty, then the Chinese will lose. The Chinese doesn't want to face the U.S. So the Chinese...
How sure are we that the Chinese
Because for the
lose?
Chinese, a small skirmish can escalate into a nuclear war. In a nuclear war, the entire Chinese people will be annihilated. So for them, war is not an option because that will mean the total destruction of China, and maybe large parts of the U.S. will be destroyed. So the Chinese doesn't want they don't want the U.S. to intervene. So they will not attack our armed ship. They will not make an armed attack on our vessel. But if they do, the Americans will be faced with a dilemma. If they honor the treaty, then Japan and Korea will be assured that when the time comes, the U.S. will be there. But if the U.S. does not honor the treaty, Japan will start to question, we cannot rely on the U.S. South Korea will say, we cannot rely on the U.S. We will have to go nuclear. And there will be a big debate in Japan whether they will go nuclear or not. But then they will realize that China is an existentialist threat. Eventually, they will have to arm themselves just like North Korea. The only defense of North Korea is nuclear. And China doesn't want that to happen because if that happens, China will be surrounded by hostile countries that are nuclear armed. You have Russia, you have South Korea, you have Japan, and you have India.
Oh, that's right.
And China doesn't want that to happen. So for China, they don't want to test the U.S., whether the U.S. will honor the treaty or not. Because if the U.S. honors the treaty, they'll be in big problem. There will be a war, and they cannot win a war. And if the U.S. does not honor the treaty, it will be worse for them because all these other countries will go nuclear. Because without a nuclear umbrella of the U.S., their only defense to survive as a nation is to go nuclear.